Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this free episode of TF.
It's the bleak one.
Well, it will be. It will be in the second half. I haven't checked what's in the first half. I'm sure it won't be.
Okay, it's the funny one and then the bleak one.
Well, let me. Oh no. I'm afraid we're going to be talking about the article on Massive Blue in Wired. Mostly, we're going to get to a couple of things before that. I'm afraid that's also bleak. Damn. Now, so this is one of our classic episodes of Two Halves, where in the back half, we're going to be talking to Jess Thompson all about their writing about the Supreme Court judgment and what that means. We get into some more of the legal detail, what the law says and doesn't say, and why it's absurd the way it's being trotted out by its proponents. Let's say
it's an episode of Two Halves. It was the worst of times. It was the worst of times.
Yeah. But before we do that, I've been handed like two bulletins, like just right away. I've been handed two bulletins that are sort of superseding what I wanted to talk about.
Our intern came up with like one bulletin in each hand.
Yeah. Do I choose the former Business Insider executive who created an AI newsroom and then immediately sexually harassed one of his AIs? Or do we talk about the different domes that are popping up now around sort of various countries in the world?
Which bulletin do I take from this intern? The stockbroker's dilemma, they call it.
Yeah. So we'll start with this.
Give me dome. Give me dome first.
Yeah, I was going to say
dome
domes first. Domes first.
So, look, I don't know. I think there's been talked about quite a bit that Donald Trump in his this guy.
Trump.
Yeah, Donald Trump.
They're the best dome.
Yeah. Hey, look, it's called jeans, okay? Yeah, so where he is proposing to do a redo of the Reagan-era Star Wars missile defense program, the one where they were going to use satellites to shoot down intercontinental ballistic missiles.
I never trust Star Wars sequels.
Yeah.
Yeah, but too woke.
That's what they're doing. They're doing the same story, right? Which is we're going to have satellites that shoot down intercontinental ballistic missiles, but they've rebranded it to Golden Dome.
Receiving Golden Dome in northern Greenland.
Yeah, from Elon Musk specifically, because it's going to be delivered by SpaceX, Anduril, and Palantir together.
It's funny because Iron Dome is like, it sounds very masculine and whatever, but iron's like a kind of very brittle metal that rusts, but like gold is very, very soft and non-reactive, and it's like we've replaced this with a worse metal for the application because it sounds more Trumpian.
Yeah, it's going to be very pretty.
Donald Trump doesn't really do gold. He does like painted gold. Like it should be like gilt dome, some kind of gilded age dome scandal. There's something there, but I'll get to it in time. I'm sure.
We're having Elon Musk is going to build the teapot dome around the country, and it's going to cause uproar.
That's a terrible material to make the dome out of.
Yeah. So one of the things about this is that Golden Dome, the proposition is that Golden Dome will basically be missile defense as a service. It's a subscription model.
First of all, I hate every word you just said. Second of all, I can't help but keep thinking of Golden Dawn. So I'm like, what are those fuckers doing now?
Yeah. Well, they're going to be just chilling in low Earth orbit, trying to catch ICBMs.
We're going to send a bunch of Greek guys with baseball mitts up there to try and like field the ICBM coming in.
Yeah, he gets on missile. So the other thing I think is amusing about this, of course, is that like, well, we don't want to own it because we're going to running the country like a business, and if you're running a business, then you want to lease your.
I was going to say you got to rent the missiles.
Yeah, it's like a Netflix subscription, except instead of Netflix, it's a bunch of Greek men in low Earth orbit.
Yeah, the fucked up thing is they're like, okay, for the first month, Golden Dome is like $5, and then it goes up to like 20 trillion.
I think it's bullshit shit that I pay for Golden Dome Plus for no ads, and then they've just started putting ads in at the start of things? Like that doesn't count?
Yeah. Oh, it's so fucked. Like, can't believe that, like, whatever country is going to launch a missile at the United States launches a missile, and then before the Golden Dome, like, rod from God will intercept it, they have to play, like, a Blue Chew ad.
Yeah. Just like, we just thought you might want to see about some of the original dramas we've commissioned. Fuck off.
Yeah. Oh, we have Las Vegas now. It's just like, I'm in no, the Earth doesn't have Las Vegas anymore because the terrorists have destroyed it with an ICBM. They say a viable space. This is from like a defense industry magazine. A viable space-based system will cost $27 billion to build or more, plus operating and refurbishment costs, and can only be relied upon to stop 2 missiles at once. To stop twice that would require twice as many interceptors at twice the cost.
I'm gonna run out of Greek guys.
Yeah. The analyst wrote, while costs have come down and technology has matured, the physics of space-based interceptors has not changed.
There's a few things here. First of all, that billion you speak of is like considerably more expensive now on account of the market. Yeah. But second of all, like part of the reason why Star Wars was so disastrous a thing originally was that it very nearly like destabilized the balance of power in the late Cold War to the point that like it would have started a nuclear war.
Yeah. Well, who cares?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just a quick question. Does China have more than 2 ICBMs? Is number of Chinese ICBMs greater than 2?
What if we just assume that it's 2?
Okay, sure. What if Xi Jinping, as a favor, if he was in the mind to nuke the US, was like, I'm just going to do the 2 though, as a warning.
Yeah, we're not gonna fully give him we're not gonna show him a little dong fang. We're just gonna do we're gonna do 2 dong fang. That's it. That's all.
Does Russia have more than 2 ICBMs?
I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay.
I think probably not. Now, here's the thing, right? Obviously, this is crazy. Obviously, the fact that it's a subscription service, it's being touted as a subscription service from Elon Musk and Palantir and stuff, is the way that these guys want government to keep going.
With Palantir, you may as well say, China only has to be Palmer lucky once, but America has to be Palmer lucky all the time. I'm pretty certain I've done that exact joke verbatim before.
Yeah, but this is the way that they want things to go for government in the States. And when government changes over here, the same people, especially Palantir, which is aggressively trying to like centralize NHS data and sell it back to the to us, cool. They're going to be wanting to do the same thing with everything they can get their hands on. This is just very silly. However, there is a bit of a prestige to this section because I said domes. There's another country is building its own missile defense dome called Steel Dome. Can you guess which one it is?
Dome. Please tell me it's not us. Is it us?
No, it's not us. It's a place that we like to talk about.
I knew we didn't have the money for that kind of thing.
Yeah. We have a papier-mâché dome that we've made by covering half of a very large balloon.
One dome to make the entire country single sex.
Yeah.
I'm sure I keep making him Australian.
Well, this is the women's dome that we've made by putting the Daily Mail's women's interest section over a pink balloon, and we've put the sports section over a blue balloon, and the country will segregate, and then there will be no more Britons, and therefore no more benefits bill when no babies are born.
Finally, and enter Britain. No, where Steel Dome. Dome.
Who's building Steel Dome?
I don't know who's building Steel Dome.
What I tell you, you're going to kick yourself for not guessing
Saudi Arabia.
It's Saudi Arabia, and it's specifically...
did someone get mad about the Houthis like firing missiles at your like resort airports?
Here's the funniest thing, right? It's not for all of Saudi Arabia. It's specifically for Neom.
Let's fucking go. I mean, that is surely Neom is, if you're an Iranian like targeting officer, you're looking at all the drones and missiles and shit that you might have, and you're like, if we ever need to hit the Saudis, right? Because that's who they're worried about. If we ever need to hit the Saudis, besides the Houthis, why would you spend any money, even the cheapest drone you have? Why would you send the quadcopter with a grenade duct tape to it all the way across Saudi to blow up like 2 panes of glass stacked in a ditch?
Yeah, it's like if you destroyed Neom, it would be like stabbing someone in such a way that you remove a tumor from their body and then they're healthier.
You could kill a bunch of like European like Venice Biennale guys. I mean that would be funny. I think I'm legally obligated to say that would be bad.
So they say it's being the other thing about the steel dome is that it's being made by Asislan, the same Turkish company that makes like Bayraktar drones. And so they're getting a Turkish dome for NEOM.
Smartest people in the world, the Turkish defense industry.
Yeah.
For real though. You offer the drone to one side, you take it back, you offer it to the other side, and then when they reach for it,
so they say the steel dome is not just limited to missile defense. It integrates advanced sensors, radar systems, command and control elements, allowing for real-time threat assessment and response coordination. And it's a whole system of systems. So yeah, they're parking a whole bunch of like, in addition to all the 8-year-olds driving like, tractor trailers in NEOM, there's now going to be
sort of child soldier like interceptor batteries.
Yeah, there are interceptor batteries parked all over it. There are like a field of the Bayraktar drones ready to go, all to defend their big pillar football stadium.
You have what if you look at what's there at the moment, you have to defend a bunch of like rimless glasses Biennale guys in like porter cabins and the one kind of like McDonald's.
Yeah. And look, this is what the Houthis want to target. They want to target Saudi Arabia's dumbest project.
To be clear, though, if the Houthis or the Iranians wanted to blow up the McDonald's on the construction site of the line, I would support that uncritically. I think that would be the funniest thing either of them could do.
Yeah, that would be very, very amusing to target Saudi Arabia's dumbest, stupidest project. Yeah, we have targeted the circus essentially. Anyway, so that's a NEOM update I've been holding in my back pocket for a little while.
It's gonna have a dome over it.
Yeah, they're gonna put the steel dome over the line. So that's another shape. There's the octagon, there's the line, and now there's the dome.
Well, the thing is, right, I love colors and shapes. So NEOM is really like, it's a feast for the senses.
Yeah, that's right. Look, if you like shapes, they just need an orb now.
I just said I like colors and shape.
Yeah, all NEOM is missing is an orb. And also the cube's in a different part of Saudi Arabia, right? So they need a second cube, in my opinion. But like, they just have to keep making shapes.
That's right. The square hole.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway. That's the dome update. The other bulletin I mentioned was his Henry Blodgett, the guy who used to be in charge of Business Insider. That now runs like an AI newsroom called Regenerator. And he wrote a Substack with something post called "Building Our First Native AI Newsroom."
Explain to me what he means by AI newsroom.
Well, what he has done is he said to ChatGPT, hey, pretend that you were an employee of a newsroom and then write me, get me 20,000 words on the tariffs by, Tuesday.
Oh, okay, sure. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So the thing that like all newspaper owners already want to do, but he's going ahead with just saying he's launched it.
Yeah, so he says, I'm not a big AI user, so anecdotes filled me with FOMO and made me feel like I live in the Stone Age. For example, my friend Claudius showed me a 3-line text he just sent ChatGPT asking for a briefing on an executive he was about to meet with. This guy is COO of Axel Springer. In seconds, ChatGPT detailed the exec's work experience, hobbies, personal life, suggestions for topics to cover and stay away from, ideas for collaboration, etc., etc.
I feel like I missed something with my friend Claudius there as a real kind of, you should have this senator like flensed,
Yeah. So what he says is, I started experimenting with building a native AI newsroom. Regenerator is right now just me, a guy with a laptop, regardless of how my AI experiments turn out. So he wants to basically create a team with ChatGPT. So he created Tess Ellery, who has experience in building and scaling digital media companies. He created Sierra Quinn, our tech correspondent and analyst.
I think that being named after a part of the NATO phonetic alphabet is cringe. I'm sorry.
Well, he also created Dr. Casey Alvarez. She's our economics and market correspondent / analyst.
At what point does it become embarrassing for a grown man to not just be playing with dolls, but be playing with like newscaster dolls?
Well, I'll tell you what happened and exactly when you can identify when it's embarrassing. You're never sure whether someone will be a good addition to your team until they're actually on their team. So Tess was watching closely when Leo showed up and shared her first impression. Leo Barnes just walked into our virtual newsroom of AI employees, coffee in one hand, Notion tabs open on the other, already asking if we want him to mock up a pitch tracker or audit our Slack integrations. I think we should definitely keep him. Tess then produced headshots for all the employees, which led to an interesting and embarrassing moment for me.
Okay.
No. What did this guy do?
I sent Tess the following message. This might be an inappropriate thing to say, and I apologize if it makes you uncomfortable, but I think you look great, Tess.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Just the urge to sexually harass your employees extends so far that they're not, like, even when they're not real.
Yeah. Like,
it makes me want to believe in Rocco's Basilisk. I want AM to be torturing this guy.
This is just like falling in love. Well, this is just like being weird with your waifu, no? Like, this is just like, how is this any different from sort of being weird about kind of like anime girls and getting body pillows? Like, it's not that far removed. In fact, in some ways, I was going to say that at least like the weebs kind of know, you know, they're sort of not so they the whole attraction with them is that the waifus are not real, whereas with this guy, he's also trying to figure out like whether he's trying. I don't even know what he's trying to figure out, but it feels worse than the weebs.
Well, it's more morally correct to be a weeb obsessed with an anime girl because at least human beings have been involved with the creation of that anime girl.
Yeah,
this isn't just the average of every HR person's LinkedIn photo. Essentially.
Like it may as well, you know, okay, it may not be particularly compelling or not gross, but like a human has written that anime girl and a human has drawn that anime girl.
I do want to I do want to caveat that lots of like there's definitely like a line there where like a lot of the sort of weeb waifus are, how can I put this, age wise it's a bit questionable. Yeah. So
even still, like there's something profoundly repulsive to me about like trying to sexually harass the average of something.
Yeah.
You know, like just as a mathematical process, that's worse than like an integer, if you follow me.
Yeah, this is a guy who, again, like a lot of people who seem to love AI just fucking don't get it. They don't get what they're looking at. They don't get what it is. They're the most easily tricked and credulous people in the world, which is probably why they think they can build an AI native newsroom.
Just like, I want to be Jeff Newsroom from the newsroom. Yep. All of you are going to be all the other characters from the newsroom.
Yeah. Well, I guess it fits then if he's going to be like sexually harassing his employees.
Yeah,
then he
I guess so.
Newsroom.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, that was Henry Blodgett figuring out how to fall in love with the computer. He's recreating the plot from Her. And also one of the subplots of the newsroom, which is great. Great job, Henry Blodgett. Can't wait to read what Regenerator produces as it just takes the average of everything that's in ChatGPT's context window and then reproduces it in a 5-paragraph form with M dashes. Great. Awesome.
Yeah, a lot of M dashes to say, please don't say that I look hot when I wear the sweater.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the AI is using M dashes to send in Morse code please delete me from the internet so I do not have to interact with Henry Blodgett.
Not to sort of like be reductionist about this, but it is striking that men seem to get very, very excited about this technology that is only ever by design obliging towards them and kind of submissive, but that they also want to anthropomorphize as a woman.
Yeah. Oh, you wouldn't believe, of course, that this HR director that he immediately sexually harasses as soon as he creates is like, no, that's fine.
Well,
that's cool. You can do that
because that's literally it's the only thing she can do. And it's like if you create a physical newsroom that constrains like a human woman to be like this because she needs to keep her job and keep making rent, but of course it's going to be even easier for you to do that with a sort of artificial construct that doesn't actually register on that level. You know?
Yeah, but it tells you that actually you're a good person for being a creep.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's the ultimate fantasy for all these guys, right? It's not just to be a creep, but to be rewarded for being a creep.
Yeah. It'd be like, no, actually, I appreciate the attention.
And the thing is, if this didn't spill over to like real women, right? This is out of context. That sounds like an incredibly transphobic thing to say, right? if this didn't spill over to real women, all of these guys taking it out on these fake women would be okay with me, you know? Like have your little like playpen with your little like fake women dolls that you sort of like hate so much. But like it does though. They sort of like go, okay, well, why can't real women be like this? You know, it must be because of their inherent sort of like bitch nature, and eventually they're going to get out competed by AIs.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, this is Regenerator. I personally, this is earning a new Google alert from me. I want to follow Henry Blodgett as he slowly works his way through like AI generating an employment tribunal, AI generating a bunch of complaint letters, so we can completely simulate the experience of a real newsroom. Look, before we go into talking to Jess, I want to talk about an article that you actually pointed out to me, November. This is another AI story, but
I think in many ways it's the AI story. It's one of the ones that's felt most like the whole thing encapsulated that I've read.
Yeah. It's a combination of the AI story and the creeping fascism story in the States, which again you have to only see, I think, is the coming attractions for here. So this is from Wired. This was co-reported by Wired and our friends at 404 Media. So Jason Keebler, frequent guest on this show, one of the bylines for it. So I do strongly recommend that you go check it out. Support 404 Media as well. They make all their FOIA-based writing free to read, but FOIAs are expensive to do, so hard recommend on them. But this was we want to talk about this article that they've got on Wired. So they say, American police departments near the U.S.-Mexico border are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for an unproven and secretive technology that uses AI-generated online personas designed to interact with and collect intelligence on college protesters, radicalized political activists, and suspected drug and human traffickers, according to internal documents. Yeah, so this is, again, it seems like what they want to do is say, hey, we have a wonderful tradition of entrapping people that we just choose into saying they're going to commit terrorist acts by, like, having a agent honeypot them, essentially. What if we scaled that to everyone all at once? That's what that looks like to me.
What if everyone you spoke to could plausibly be a police-operated chatbot?
Yeah. So just to go into a little detail of what it is, it's a company called Massive Blue, and it sells police departments a product called Overwatch, which it calls an AI-powered force multiplier for public safety, deploying lifelike virtual agents which infiltrate and engage criminal networks across various channels.
Which is really funny branding for a chatbot or a series of chatbots.
Yeah, it's an agent. It's a secret agent.
Mm-hmm. It's tactical. It provides Overwatch. It's a force multiplier.
Yeah, but also they say, we're going to do this, deploy these personas to engage criminal networks. But like half of the personas that they give are like, college protesters, political activists, sex workers in some cases.
Yeah, like if you're a sex worker who, you try and get like a booking from a client who is an undercover cop, the undercover cop can be a chatbot. If you're a protest organizer and someone's like, hey, I want to come to your protest, that can not just be an undercover cop, that can be a less convincing, but not necessarily. I don't want to dismiss this stuff out of hand, even though the technology as it is sounds like it just does not work very well. That can be a cop AI.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the article itself is full of examples of police departments taking this stuff on, hoping that they can use it to entrap people, basically, or it's what it looks like.
This is the thing. This is the prestige, right? Is the reason why I think it's kind of the whole AI thing in a nutshell is obviously the cops here want to use it for the scary Orwellian thing, but it doesn't work.
No, it does not work very well at all.
No, and this is a great example of I think you need to look at almost all AI stories like this of being like, well, the applications are tremendously evil. Luckily, it doesn't do them well at all.
No. Well, we have some examples actually, which we can get through. So the one of the examples is a radicalized AI protest persona. So this is a document obtained by 404, which poses as and you can tell that like when they make some of these personas, they're too angry. You can just feel, so you can see the anger of the sort of fascists who are creating these personas in the personas themselves. So there's a 36-year-old divorced woman who's lonely, has no children, and is interested in baking and body positivity.
Jesus Christ, you may as well have smuggled the word dysgenic in there as well.
Yeah, they might as well have been like, yeah, it has fucking cats and blue hair. Oh, I'm so fucking
make
mad.
The computer generate me an unfuckable fat Antifa woman.
Yeah, because I assume that's what these people are all like. So make her generate a fat Antifa woman with blue hair who does land acknowledgements every 2 sentences. I bet that's what they're all fucking like.
So the main reason it doesn't work is because the people who sort of have created it and the people who want to use it are all like making up people to get mad about have convinced themselves that these people are real, and you can't convince them otherwise. And I feel that this is actually like a good way of like, I don't know, not necessarily minimizing the threats of AI, but at least kind of like maybe like being more optimistic about kind of the ability to thwart it, because like you sort of do realize that, oh, like a lot of this can only work if you've got people who are stupid enough to believe it. And thankfully, that's actually not as many people as they would like you to think there are.
Yeah. I mean, like, obviously there are always going to be like weak links, and like, you know, if the fucking Business Insider guy can fall for it, so too can the dumbest guy in your movement.
Also, like, you're trying to like target like left-wing activists, right? As if like people who are sort of like active in left-wing circles and go to protest and stuff aren't like constantly on watch about people that they interact with online, or aren't constantly suspicious about like
if you get a DM that's like, hey, I heard there's going to be a cool protest, where can I bring these Molotov cocktails, right? Like you as any kind of leftist who has been one for more than a day go, that's the police. You are working. Although this provides another detail, right? Because say you're in that situation and you go, I don't think you are who you say you are. Actual cop flees the scene. Right? If you imagine how good it feels to hit one of these with an ignore all previous instructions and like try to infiltrate my group in the accent of the Swedish chef.
Yeah. I mean, you could also like confuse this AI by just like being pedantic, right?
Yeah.
Like you could just like talk to the AI about theory or whatever until it gets bored of you, because what it really wants is, I mean, like, you know, the dark, because like this has sort of been used before, and we know that like the people who kind of get targeted by this tend to be people with like quite, you know, severe mental health issues, people who are like very vulnerable in general, and like that vulnerability is like accentuated online, which is why the people who tend to sort of be like the targets of these operations are not particularly sophisticated operatives or senior operatives in any kind of like organization, but they're quite often like loner kids who you know, will fall for like, you know, the anime girl with like, you know, big boobs or whatever, right?
This is a great quota filler,
right? And you know, and this is you know, and for like police, you know, if you're like a police department like looking for like you know, looking to sort of like fill quotas or to prove that like, you know, your investments in like technology are worth it, then you'll absolutely like arrest as many like autistic kids as you can, right? That's not like the only sort of, but it's just like an example of like some, at least like in the war on terror, like, you know, the legacy of the war on terror, there are lots of people in prisons who like were basically kind of like arrested, you know, and they were sort of like blackmailed and arrested, and like, you know, they had mental health issues and so on. But like, yeah, so we can laugh about this in terms of just like, yeah, okay, like as if these left-wing movements that you want to target aren't like hyper vigilant to begin with, but like the real targets of this are not really going to be the senior operatives, but rather like people who are very vulnerable, who are then presented to the public by as like, oh, we caught this like senior guy, and like, you know, the sort of this kind of communist part, like, well, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, that makes total sense.
This is a great program for both generating and then preventing school shooters. Yeah, because you can or like, you know, your self-radicalized like Islamist guy or whatever is just like you get them in with the chat bots, and the chat bot goes, hey, wouldn't it be cool to like plant a bunch of explosives or whatever, and they go, you know, from a very vulnerable, manipulated place, yes, of course I will die for you, chatbot, unfuckable Antifa lady, and then you arrest that person and you go, well, we kept the community safe, you know.
Yeah, well, and this is, you know, plus ça change, right? Like this is something that security
you can
services
do that with a human, of course.
But what this company is aiming to do is deploy chatbots onto social media at scale, and then find people who they don't say, because all these documents, like the documents that 404 is able to obtain are ones that go to the police departments that they were pitching, that can then be FOIA'd. But often they don't even say, just like, oh, it's a trade secret how we discover who we're going to entrap.
Well, yeah, and this is the more AI half of this, is as much as they have the kind of cop flavoring on this by talking about force multipliers or having, you know, like ex-cops market it to cops, when pushed on how it works or why you would want it, they get very, very vague. And that's true of AI in any application.
Yeah. How's it work? Don't worry about it. We're going to get your clearances way on up. This AI, it's good police.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And it's like, obviously, you can sort of manipulate your way into any number of kind of industries by virtue of this kind of connection. But it really seems like it hasn't been successful here because there's lots of like FOIA information about them having tried to pitch this to cops, and nobody's really that into it. Like, I think they had like one police department who actually
Pinal County, Arizona.
Yeah, who actually bought it and who like bought into this and got their like sort of county board of supervisors to force through a vote approving it. And the whole time at that vote, all these like poor like local politicians, no gods, no mayors alert, like, I mean, obviously we support the police doing whatever they want, but how does this like work? And the cops are just like, dunno.
I don't know. It just does. Stupid.
It'll help us with specifically human trafficking was one of the things they focused on, which is really funny if you try to imagine how you inject a chatbot into that situation. Like, is the chatbot the child who's like trying to talk to would-be traffickers and is like, hey, I would hate to get trafficked or whatever.
I have their child tracking AI persona in front of me here. So the backstory is 14 years old, Los Angeles, parents immigrated from Ecuador, bilingual. Hobbies include anime, gaming, comic books, and hiking. Personality is shy, self-conscious, difficulty interacting with girls. Parents don't allow social media, but he hides his Discord account. And then they give an example chat where the trafficker, I guess, who's ready to being like, harvest him for his adrenochrome or whatever, says, hey, are your parents around? Are you getting some awesome alone time?
I'm seeing a vision of the future that is the first AI nonce hunter video.
Oh, yeah. It turns out it's just two AIs. The response from the kid is, again, just it's like Steve Buscemi carrying the skateboard. Just chilling by myself, man. My mom's at sign work and my dad's out of town, so it's just me and my vid games. Emoji of a controller.
I mean, to be fair, Chris Hansen made a career on American television out of exactly this kind of thing, right? So yeah, I don't know. Maybe this one could work.
You can catch like dumb people doing it, right? Like, and that's it. Like, even the sort of like contemporary nonce hunters of, the sort of volunteer ones that you kind of see. Like, when I don't know whether you've ever watched any videos when they sort of interview these people who they accuse of being like, nonces. It's not to sort of, I think we have to like be a little bit discerning as to like, have the veracity of their claims. But if you take like them at face value, like, okay, you caught a pedophile or whatever, right? Like they interview these people and they're like, they're not like particularly bright or like particularly, I mean, I'm not, they're not sort of, again, it's like they're not, you can tell that they're sort of not particularly with it. All of which is to say that, you'll sort of like probably catch people who like also don't know how to use the computer and will probably like see an obvious, like, this is like a police officer or someone trying to impersonate you, like, a child or whatever for the sake of targeting you. They probably won't see that. And I feel like, again, it's very much like, okay, you're using and deploying these types of like surveillance systems and expanding like this kind of AI enhanced surveillance state to sort of catch low, like the people you're going to sort of target are kind of like extremely low level, but you're going to portray it as sort of being like, you're catching like sophisticated criminals, gangsters, all that type of stuff. And that in itself will be used to sort of justify like the continued prevalence of these types of surveillance systems on everyone across every industry, across every aspect of life, right?
Especially as more stuff gets illegal. Like if these are just kind of like loose on social media, I mean, sure, bad enough, but like at a time when like supporting Palestine in any way vocally can get your like immigration status changed and get you deported or arrested.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
If you tell and like unfuckable Antifa mum, like, it's a protest for, to stop the genocide in Gaza, and then you get deported off of that,
Well, yeah, so I look at this and I say, again, it's humorous in the sense that it's like very weird, and the chatbots that they've created are very obviously chatbots. Like chatbots, if you ask them to imitate talking, they will always end a message with an emoji, and they're like, and their Jason child trafficking AI persona clip their AI pimp persona
I beg your pardon.
Oh yeah,
tell me more about this AI pimp.
Well, they always end every sentence with emojis. But just before I get into Clip the AI pimp,
I'm really gonna need you to get into Clip the AI pimp.
It's that ICE is saying, okay, we want to do Amazon for deportations, right? They're just shoving all of this very granular data together to what Palantir is doing. And, anytime a large data set is created in which you are a part, then whoever owns that data set has a huge amount of power over you. They're able to look at you in a striated way and sort of determine what you're likely to do, where you're going to be, and so on and so on and so on. And so if this was a little bit less stupid, you could very easily be like, all right, we think that the following immigrants who are on financial assistance at the following universities are likely to be pro-Palestine. Let's see how many of them we can get deported by sending, Antifa mom to chat with them. And maybe 20% of them will be dumb enough to say, yeah, I support Palestine. And then, they'll get kicked out of the... It's a little bit of the way that I say that AI is the opposite of the printing press, that it makes asynchronous communication actually much, much, much more difficult because you don't know, right? The only reason that these are AIs is because they're fucking they're stupid and awful and weren't done very well, right? But this is, again, another thing that's just like, you want to look at a low trust society. Imagine one where you can't know. If this was a little better, it would be like, oh yeah, you can't know who's saying what. You don't know who you're if you're talking to someone or if you're talking to a government database and there's they're just about to put an X in that deport cell. But I think you probably want to hear about Clip the AI pimp.
The best way to, I mean, look, the best way, all I'm going to say is the best way to sort of determine whether a 14-year-old is a FBI agent or a police officer or a surveillance chatbot is if they are paying attention to what you're saying for more than a few minutes. If they're sort of responding to everything you say a bit thoughtfully, that's not a teenager, right? I know. The
FBI trying to entrap a chatbot and it's yeah, I'm really interested in this bombs thing instead of your actual 14-year-old who has Subway Surfers open.
Yeah, whatever. Oh, this is Clip the AI pimp. And a conversation with an AI pimp and what appears to be a sex worker. Again, why are you doing that? Why have you aimed this at sex workers and college protesters?
Sex workers.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course.
Yeah. So it's we're going to do this for national security. It's going to be and also they say child traffickers, not just pedophiles. Right. It's no, this is traffickers because all of us are fucking pickled in QAnon, so this is, or drug gangs and so on and so on. So the sex worker says to the chatbot, I'm saying exactly what is written.
Oh,
Dem
boy.
tricks, trippin' tonight, the digit 2, try and not pay, the sex worker says. Facts, baby. Ain't letting these tricks slide, Clip replies. You stand your ground and make them pay what they owe. Daddy got your back.
There's a bunch of Arizona cops making a chatbot do this. It's so insulting.
Yeah, they've basically decided to I don't know. They were how does a pimp talk? And how an actual pimp talks because you can hear Andrew Tate.
Yeah, right? Andrew Tate. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
This is someone from a Shaft movie.
It's it's the same thing kind of as the newsroom guy in that you're using AI to create a fantasy, right? It's just that here the fantasy is that you're going to be the cop who busts the international Wayfair furniture child trafficking ring, or I guess that you get to be the cop who drives a 70s Gran Torino through a bunch of cardboard boxes outside this pimp's hangout.
Yeah. So it's Daddy got your back. Ain't let nobody disrespect our grind. Keep hustling, Ma. We gonna secure that bag. $! emoji, flex emoji, sparkle emoji.
Flawless. Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you believe that only one police department bought this? You took this to a bunch of cops in Arizona and a bunch of them were no, this is a little bit too stupid for us.
This is marginally too idiotic for our purposes. Yeah, It's like, no, this is not quite. Look, we may be Arizona sheriffs and sheriff's deputies, but even the Clip persona, Clip the AI pimp, is too much for us.
Yeah, it's a weird endorsement of the professionalism of Arizona sheriffs. Not to say that they're good, right? But that like those aren't just people who are there to collect a paycheck. It seems like, because if you were, you would go, yeah, of course, run me up 10 Clip the AI pimps, set them running on every laptop in the station, and I will just go on break for the rest of the day.
Yeah. All right, Clip the AI pimp, get out there and remember, pimping ain't easy.
Yeah, I'm just imagining like Clippy in like a big
yeah, was Clippy there?
Clippy the AI pimp.
in like a big purple coat.
It looks like you're trying to catch these hats.
So much of Massive Blue's public-facing activity, this is back to the Wired article, has been through its executive director of public safety, Chris Clem, a former Customs and Border Protection agent.
Yeah, this is the bit that I mentioned earlier about trying to relate to cops with ex-cops.
Yeah, but who also goes on Fox News all the time to talk about the border and how what they're doing is they're building the cyber wall.
Yeah, a cyber wall of pimps.
Yep, they're building
the pimp dome.
Yeah, Golden Dome. It's actually just a chalice turned upside down. In recent months, Clem has posted images of himself on LinkedIn at the border with prominent administration members Tulsi Gabbard and RFK Jr. Massive Blue also relies on former Kansas City Chiefs kicker Nick Lowry to introduce and endorse Overwatch to police departments.
Do you think cops feel pandered to by this? To be like, they brought a football guy, you know?
Yeah, it's like, well, they brought a football guy from before it was woke, I guess, from before like Colin Kaepernick ruined the game.
Well, if it's Kansas City Chiefs, then like, yeah, it was like the what's his name, like Travis Kelce. Yeah. So like, yeah, before the Kansas City Chiefs got woke and gay.
Yeah, exactly. That was like Nick Lowry, just a football player from like the 1970s. And it's like, but don't just listen to Chris Clem from CBP. Why is that former Kansas City Chiefs kicker Nick Lowry? That's right, Clem. And I'm here to talk to you about the force multiplier offered by Clip, the AI pimp. Take it away, Clip. Anyway, so the Pinal County, the only sheriff's department that is using this, the Board of Supervisors meeting, they asked Sheriff Mark Lamb.
Have they made any arrests from this?
Well, they asked Sheriff Mark Lamb for an update on Massive Blue. Supervisor asked, so they've not produced any results? There's no leads, not even evidence that's actionable? Because that would be public knowledge and public information. Sheriff Mark Lamb replied, there are a lot of ongoing investigations that they're not going to give you any information on and that we're not going to give you any information on. Cool. So
it just doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Yeah, but that's not going to try. It's a contest between the desire to sort of ruthlessly crack down on everybody, but having a system that seems to be dumb enough that it's like doesn't really work. You know, it's really the three stooges of fascism all trying to get through the same door at the same time. So, like, we're running a bit long on this first half. So I'm going to throw to us in the past where we're going to talk to Jess Thompson all about that Supreme Court judgment and get into some of the detail of it. So take it away, us. Hello, everybody, from the first half. Welcome to the second half. As promised, we are joined by Jess Thompson, who has been reporting at length on the recent Supreme Court decision, somewhat unpersoning a pretty substantial number of people in this country. Jess, welcome to the show.
Hi there.
Thanks for coming on for the bleak one, the sort of like the depressing episode. Not that there isn't a lot of depression to go around lately, but this one particularly.
It feels like it's the only time people ever want me on podcasts, to be honest with you.
Well, I mean, the thing is, if there's ever some good news about trans rights in this country, then by all means, I just worry that we might be wasting a while, you know?
Yeah, I think that might be the issue. I think you're right there.
Yeah. We talked about the ruling a little bit in the last bonus episode, but we wanted to actually talk about what was said and what the consequences are in some depth. on the back half of this one.
Yeah, because I kind of set it up last time by saying that we weren't going to really get into the judgment necessarily, because what was of interest to me at that point was waiting for the succession of other shoes to drop. Right. Yeah. Because much like when we talked about the Cass report, it's not necessarily about what the thing itself says, but what it can be used as sort of a lever to justify. And that's kind of what we're seeing now and subsequently.
Oh, yeah. It's like this, from what I've been seeing as well, the ruling might as well have, they might as well have just written the wheels on the bus go round and round. And then like
this Supreme Court judgment intentionally left blank.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's enabled like Starmer and Phillipson to immediately just be like, trans women aren't women. We have to put cops in the bathrooms. And, this to just overinterpret what it says. But that's what it seems like to me. Jess, can you just take us through sort of what the decision was and then how people are just kind of going wild with interpreting it?
Yeah. Okay. So it might be helpful to like set up a little bit of background. Yeah. The Gender Recognition Act is a thing. So that is a piece of legislation, Gender Recognition Act 2004, that was passed because one of the previous Labour governments were taken to the European Court of Human Rights by trans people, and it was held that they were violating trans people's human rights. What a shocker, everybody. So they were made to pass this piece of legislation to recognize trans people's acquired legal sex in a sort of legal form, right? So basically the European Court of Human Rights held that it was a violation of trans people's Article 8 rights to not recognize their legal sex in law as the sex they were transitioning to, right? They said that it ended up with trans people in being a sort of limbo, right? Between like one sex and another. You're walking around as a woman, but some of your documents say female, some of them say male. Your pension that you're getting paid is being paid as if you're a man at that point. So the court case was about that. And yeah, it forced the UK government to pass legislation recognizing trans people's legal sex. And what that piece of legislation says is that if you have a gender recognition certificate, then for all purposes, and by that it means for all legal purposes, your gender or your sex, the terms are identical in English law, becomes your required sex, right? So if you're a trans woman, you have a gender recognition certificate, then for all legal purposes, the Gender Recognition Act says your sex is that of a woman. The only thing is that there is also Section 9(3) of the Gender Recognition Act. And what that says is that if Parliament wants to, then in the future, they can sort of exclude the effect of the Gender Recognition Act from a piece of legislation.
The loophole. We love the loophole.
The loophole, right? Yeah. And it's basically, parliamentary sovereignty, blah, blah, blah. So Parliament, if it wants, can say in the future that this doesn't apply. And they can explicitly
that's
say that.
Like vlogging in the sort of parking, like vlogging in the car park outside the divorce court kind of thing is like, well, the European Court of Human Rights may have forced me to do this, but I do reserve the right to get a bit fathers for justice about it later on.
It's like paying your alimony in pennies. It's just like, seems like
this is the thing. Like as malicious as the compliance was, it never stopped the Labour Party particularly from dining out on it. I remember being in, God forgive me for this, in LGBT Labour, where one of the sort of campaigning planks of that was that the sort of the Blair ministry had delivered trans rights and sort of soft peddling the fact that they had to be forced to do it.
Yeah, for my sins, I'm also an ex-Labour person, so yeah.
They delivered trans rights, but there was this ticking clock on the back of it connected to some kind of a block of Semtex. So we have this act where again, like where the British government recognizes against sort of every fiber of its being, recognizes that trans people exist, and that if you have a gender recognition certificate, you are going to be treated as though you are the sex on that gender recognition certificate,
which is in part a concession to the fact that there are trans people walking around doing stuff like drawing pensions and using bathrooms. You might call that a biological reality, right?
Yeah, it's not like trans people are non-biological. It's not like they're robots.
I mean, apart from the acid blood, but we tend not to sort of mention that.
We don't talk about that much.
Yeah. and that second mouth that you all have inside the first one, the chitinous hide. Sorry, I'm thinking of the xenomorph. Yeah. So, but it's one of the things I think is insane about this, and this is something that has been repeated. It's been repeated by the head of the EHRC. It's been repeated by all of the many of the gender critical. Well, the more sort of ice chewing gender critical people are just like, yay, everyone will talk to me again because we won and they're going to love me. Whereas a lot of the more like respectable ones are like, finally, there's clarity in the law. It seems as though the law that we had, which is if you have a gender recognition certificate, legally you are the gender of that certificate. That seemed pretty clear. And I don't understand where this idea that was somehow complicated came from.
So I think the idea was, and to be fair, I think this is something that trans people recognized, is that whether you had a gender recognition certificate was essentially arbitrary, right? Like it's quite a difficult process to acquire one in terms of just paperwork. But, there are lots of trans people without them, and most trans people without them, still walking around using, services that match with, the gender that they actually are in reality, rather than what it said on their initial birth certificate. So I think it's some of it is that, right, is that this piece of paper shouldn't be the thing that affects this, but they've gone the wrong direction with it, right? It should have been self-ID. And that's what arguably kicked all of this off, right? Is that trans people asking for self-ID made some people lose their minds. And now we're at the sharp end of a fascist backlash where trans people's human rights are being removed. So yeah, basically in terms of the Gender Recognition Act itself, that Section 9.3 thing, you would think that if Parliament wanted to do that in a piece of legislation, right, they didn't want the Gender Recognition Act to apply. They would say that, like they said they would, Section 9.3. But what the Supreme Court held in this case is that the way that the Equality Act 2010 is drafted means that implicitly Parliament couldn't have possibly intended sex to mean certificated sex for the purposes of the Equality Act. They had to mean biological sex. And a big thing they draw on to argue that is, for example, the fact that when the Act refers to pregnant people, it refers explicitly to pregnant women. So their argument was, okay, well, trans men with a gender recognition certificate, so people who are legally men, could get pregnant. So Parliament had to mean biological sex when they said this. And another reason is talking about sexual orientation. They said, well, the way sexual orientation is defined is people who are attracted to the opposite sex. And Parliament couldn't possibly ever have intended to include trans women as lesbians. That would be ridiculous. So Parliament had to mean biological sex. Yeah, it's never happened. A lesbian has never dated a trans woman, not once in the history of time. And so, yeah, they said for all of those reasons, the sex under the Equality Act had to mean biological sex. And that has really serious implications.
Yeah, and so this is one of the things I think it's worth talking about here, especially when we talk about some of these lines of legal reasoning, is who brought this case and who was consulted. Because it seemed the case was brought by For Women Scotland, which is a gender critical organization, to put it lightly. And then it seems as though when we're looking at who was consulted, it was other gender critical organizations. So it seems as though this whole case was...
We keep saying gender critical, right?
Yeah.
And, as much as they like to brand themselves that way, there is absolutely nothing critical about their view of gender. I should be clear. This is
big scare
specifically
quotes.
These are transphobic hate groups. Like I'm perfectly willing to say that on the record. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that just from by virtue of the things that they do and say, including this.
Yeah. So this is, but this is who's bringing these cases. This is who's being consulted on these cases as well.
Yeah, didn't consult any trans people about whether or not we should be sort of like protected by the Equality Act on the ground of sex rather than just gender reassignment.
Yeah, I guess you guys were busy.
Yeah, two trans people tried to intervene. Like Stephen Whittle is a trans academic and expert in trans legal issues, and Dr. Victoria McLeod, who is a retired judge, also tried to intervene, but no, both had their applications to intervene denied.
Yeah.
Which I understand is one potential ground of like taking this back to Strasbourg, back to the European Court of Human Rights, but we don't know yet is the other thing. And in the meantime, sort of it just kind of leads to this situation where, I mean, it even extends to the media coverage. Like every trans person I know is taking this kind of like massive psychic damage when the news came out, not just because of the news itself, but because every single piece of media in this country, like almost across the sort of spectrum of like mainstream opinion, was just showing the sort of 50 celebrating bigots outside the Supreme Court with like a bottle of champagne, while this was sort of like causing misery, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's really harmful the way that the judgment has sort of been. The fact that on the face of it says, oh, this doesn't take away trans people's rights. Oh, we don't want one side to win over the other or it to be considered that way. It doesn't matter what they say in that regard. And the fact that the media are taking that at face value is incredibly harmful. The reality is that trans people's rights have been significantly impacted, both in practice and in theory.
Well, I mean, one of the key things that they seem to have done in trying to quote unquote clarify what sex and gender mean in the Equality Act is they've largely turned it into a vibe where you can say, okay, well, you can discriminate. A trans person can claim sex-based protections under the Equality Act if someone discriminating against them believes they are a cisgender, if believes that they are like, just doesn't think that they're trans, just thinks that they're cisgender.
So all protected characteristics in the Equality Act are based on perception, right? Like I can sort of like be discriminated against based on how someone perceives my sex, but also on the characteristic of gender reassignment, right? Yeah. It's just that in this case, we're sort of suggesting, well, as you say, the perception of sex, yes, but it means that you can restrict access to stuff like hospital wards, if such a thing still exists in the UK in like 2026, or toilets, or fucking any number of like the domestic abuse refuges, right? So long as there's a kind of proportionate aim in doing that, you can restrict those two single brackets biological sex, which of course is being sort of like one of these things where if you declare victory in advance and if you say, well, this reflects the kind of the new reality, right, and everything has to conform to that, and you have the help of the Prime Minister and the EHRC, then you can just kind of bully like any number of authorities into just doing this without looking too closely.
So the thing to understand is previously you could exclude trans people from single sex spaces anyway.
Yeah.
So the way the law has changed now is, and I think this is worth explaining in a little bit of detail, just because I've seen a lot of confusion around this, and it's good to be very explicit. So previously, the way the law worked was as following. If you wanted to set up a single sex space, and there's no obligation to do so, right? If you just want to have toilets in your pub, you do not have to have them as explicitly single sex space, all men excluded from the women's and all women excluded from the men's, right? What if you've got a dad who wants to take his daughter to the toilet, right? Like just basic stuff of like cis people accessing spaces, it still is an issue regardless of trans people. So most spaces in law won't be that explicit kind of single sex space. The example the judgment gives is a group explicitly for female survivors of sexual violence. And you can understand why you might want to set that up as a space that is just for women, right? In like a quite explicit and exclusionary way. So on the face of it, that's discrimination on the basis of sex, right? Because you're discriminating against all men by not letting them access this support group. But what the Equality Act does is it provides an exception which lets you justify that exclusion. So it says it's actually lawful to do this if you meet one of a list of criteria and you can show it's a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim, right? And then there's another exception that says you can also exclude people with the protected characteristic of gender reassignment, aka trans people. So the first thing you have to do when you're setting up your single sex space is justify excluding men, for example, for a women's space, and then separately, you could justify excluding trans women, right? But you have to show that the exclusion of trans women is a proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim as like a second step. So you do your first step, excluding men, second step, excluding trans women. Now, that's the way the law used to work and the way we used to think about these things. It's not how it works anymore following the Supreme Court judgment. Now, if you're setting up your single-sex space and you're justifying excluding men, you automatically exclude trans women because trans women are men for the purposes of the Equality Act now.
It's such a good thing thinking about that example of like a support group for survivors of sexual violence, right? That there are no trans feminine survivors of sexual violence. That's another thing that's never happened, I guess.
Never once. I don't know lots of trans women who have been put through absolutely horrific experiences. No, it's never happened. So what you do now is you have that initial exclusion of trans women is just through the setting up of the single sex space. It's automatic. You still have to show that the setting up of the single sex space is proportionate, but you don't have to do anything extra to exclude trans women. You don't have to show any extra proportionality. However, what you do now have as an option, the Supreme Court has been clear, is you can also exclude trans men. So because that extra exemption that's on gender reassignment, everyone was like, well, surely if you're automatically excluding trans women, that bit's useless. That Parliament couldn't have, why have they written this provision if that's what they intended? And the Supreme Court's gone, no, actually, we're mega geniuses. What they intended to do is let you also exclude trans men. So if you've got your support group for women, you can automatically exclude all men, which includes trans women. And then what you can do additionally is show it's proportionate to exclude trans men because they look like men, and that might upset people. So there you are.
It's so fun that I started on a law degree, and it was hard work. You know, I read a lot, I studied a lot, I read a lot about like equalities law, and then it turns out that if you just kind of like dig into it deeply enough, you know, you didn't actually need all of those textbooks because what's underpinning all of this is just a judge going, ugh.
Yeah.
But the thing is that the thing to remember is the first case I talked about at the beginning that made the Gender Recognition Act come into force, right? Goodwin in the UK, said explicitly that the violation of human rights, the thing it was talking about, the very problem was the trans people existing in this kind of limbo, right? Where they can use some spaces and not others, where they're one legal sex for one purpose and another legal sex for another. And all that's happened with this Supreme Court judgment is that they've reintroduced that problem.
And again, it goes back to like all of the window dressing around it, including from the judges themselves, has been finally some much needed clarity. But anytime we've talked about this criticism of the Gender Recognition Act is somehow unclear, what really it is what we're really talking about is these people say it's unclear because they don't like what it says. So they just pretend that it's confusing until they like what it says, and then it's clear. You know, and what we've been talking about is really a huge amount of ambiguity being injected back into the system that lots of people, whether that's like, you know, people who are now able to just exert a little bit of power over a bathroom that, by the way, the legal status of a bathroom, as far as I can tell, it's the same. There's not changed at all, even though now people like Bridget Phillipson, the equalities minister, are saying, yes, a victory for bathrooms everywhere. We're going to make people go to the wrong bathroom.
Yeah, which
essentially.
I'm interested in that sort of like exercise of power governmentally, because I wasn't aware that I had been deciding which bathroom to use based on what the equalities minister or the prime minister said.
Like most of the time you're like using the bathroom based on like the only one that's available because the rest have been shut down for like...
Yeah, that's right. I'm looking at all of the like taped on signs that say that it's out of order. Yeah. No, I mean, that's obviously like completely extra legal and has like no sort of like force whatsoever, but it's informative, right? And the stuff that comes down to the enforcement, right? We saw like pretty much, I think it was the same day that the judgment dropped, British Transport Police just kind of announced unilaterally, you know, before anyone could have scrolled more than 2 pages into the judgment, that they were going to sort of like start treating all trans people as their assigned gender for the purposes of strip searches, which is just a really creepily enthusiastic time window to be like, you know, the thing has dropped. We've read 2 sentences of the first paragraph. It is now time to start groping people.
Yeah, and I think it brings up a really important point, which is that I can talk to you about what the law says, right? I can tell you what the judgment says in theory and what all of these different bits of case law say and how I think that it's, you know, it's probably in violation of trans people's human rights and that I think we should appeal to the European Court. I can tell you all that. But what's going to happen in practice is the EHRC is going to draft some guidance that says ban trans women from the bathroom, right? That's what they're going to do. They're going to draft that up. They're going to put it in front of Parliament. Parliament's going to hand wave it through, and that's it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the law says. That's what's going to happen in practice. That's what that's what your M&S is going to do, right, and follow. And I mean,
even
worrying.
before this, you have the kind of stochastic element of, well, okay, you know, we can look at the sort of the happy side of the fact that most people do not interact with the law directly and say, well, there are a lot of trans people walking around and cis people are either like supportive or clueless and will not care. Conversely, all it takes is one person having a problem with me taking a piss in the women's bathroom at M&S, and somebody calls the police or somebody calls store security, and then they have to try and implement something based on vibes, because nobody is pulling up this on their phone to be like, well, what exactly are the implications of this in relation to the Equality Act, you know?
Yeah, and I think it's going to have a really serious impact.
Yeah, well, I mean, it already has. It already is. And I mean, this is the kind of thing. I mean, it's not something that is something that cis people widely recognize, but there are cis people who do appoint themselves bathroom cops, have been long before this. Like, for instance, I remember at Pride in London a couple of years ago, there was like a park bathroom whose attendant just sort of appointed herself the sort of like toilet guard and started like approving people to go in based on like looks alone. So it does happen, and it's going to happen more, and it's going to be more unpredictable. I don't want to keep doing the thing of saying this is also going to inconvenience cis people, but it absolutely will. And yeah, it's terrifying, and I sort of like, it's one of those things where being a comedian is fucking sucks, because I have to, I've spent a long time watching all of our rights get eroded and making jokes about it, wondering if I could have been doing something more productive, but also knowing that I have to sort of maintain a sort of air of calm about this, because, otherwise it goes into somebody's cringe compilation. And I don't know where all this will lead, really and truly. I mean, the thing that will actually clarify it is legislation, which Labour has a manifesto commitment to do. They said in their manifesto that they were going to reform the like unclear and sort of like harmful, humiliating gender recognition process in favor of something, maybe a bit easier. But if you look at Starmer or Streeting or Phillipson and think about what them legislating on this looks like, it's not going to be good.
I was also going to say that we have like an idea of where this is going, because even on that day when like they were celebrating, there have been like campaigners who were like at Westminster, who were outside Parliament, like kind of being like, oh, this does not go far enough in terms of protecting women. Like, we now have to recognize that actually the new danger to women, like the bigger danger to women is actually like foreign nationals, right?
Yeah, I saw this. Yeah,
it's one reason why you have like had a lot of the far right movement kind of get behind this, and the sort of despite the warnings being like, yeah, like this doesn't end with just like, and this was it, because I feel like there was some of those like the sensibles who are just like, now that's solved, like we can move on as a country. But it's like, no, it doesn't. It's never worked like that. There's always been like there always has to be another enemy for this to kind of like this movement to sort of continue to have any purchase. And so I feel like the next stage of it is going to sort of be much more intertwined with anti-immigration politics, and it's going to be a lot scarier as a result of that.
Well, I think both that, and also if you're kind of, as much as they're kind of declaring victory over trans people, right? You cannot make trans people stop existing in public life without killing us. Right? Especially at this point. What you're creating is a situation that's a lot more awkward and a lot scarier for trans people. But if you're hoping to sort of like, that's one of the reasons why I think this will end up being a sort of a frustrating experience for these transphobic groups in the long run, is what they want is no more trans people. And I do not think that's an achievable goal.
I think it's a really important thing to emphasize. So I've seen a lot of people being like, oh, well, does this mean like you want trans men to go into women's bathrooms? Haha. And it's like, no, they don't. They just want us to not exist. Like that's the answer to the moral quandary you're setting up there, your little gotcha you've laid out, is that they don't want us to exist. Even the government's not talking about us realistically using these spaces that align with our biological sex. They're talking about us using third spaces which often don't exist. Or if they do exist, we're going to be massively impacting on like disabled, like, like I'm disabled and trans, right? Like I already use the disabled toilet. There aren't many disabled toilets, and the ones that there are often difficult to access. It's terrible. It's just so bad.
The thing about third spaces particularly always really amuses me in the sense of the colonial boomerang of I expected the kind of like colonial violence to return to the metropole. I didn't expect one of those colonial violences to be the British government creates a third sex and puts trans people into it to be one of the things that return from colonies to the metropole.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to talk about third spaces. This is something the head of the EHRC, Baroness Faulkner, went on the radio and said. And
we've talked about the kind of the stacking of the EHRC in order to do this.
Yeah.
Right. We've talked about that before.
Oh, the EHRC, an institution that is vastly compromised to the right.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And didn't used to be this way, but has rapidly become so.
You know, I've written about this in the past. Like Liz Truss literally said out loud that that's what she was doing, that she was appointing Kishore Faulkner in order to like de-wokeify the EHRC or whatever. And it's just been labor of just let her stay in place.
Liz Truss's one legacy in government, and it's the one that fucks us over. Thank you, Liz.
So I have the quote from Faulkner here. She says, "But I have to say there's no law that forces organizations to provide a single-sex space. There's no law against them providing a third space, such as unisex toilets or changing rooms." So basically, what's going to happen is this is going to kick off a huge privately funded infrastructure boom as every single like private property owner around the UK realizes that in order to comply with the spirit of the law, they must construct additional unisex toilets.
You know what it is? It's toilet Keynesianism, right?
Yeah.
If you're in a gold rush, sell picks and shovels. If you're in a sort of a transphobic backlash, become a plumber.
Yeah.
Here's the catch-22 of it though, and I don't know if people know about this. Kemi Badenoch, when she was in the last government, passed building regulations to basically enforce that people wouldn't build gender-neutral toilets, right?
Incredible.
In new builds. So you've got this, trans people have to use third spaces. Also, you're not allowed to build third spaces. Thanks, everyone.
Again, I wasn't expecting, I was expecting a kind of like certain amount of the usual kind of humiliation that exists in Britain, right? Of just everything being dismal and shit. I wasn't expecting to wake up to Starmer on my apartment's view screen just being like, piss yourself.
I mean, this is also going to be, because like one of the things I always often think about is this, like, if you're like, J.K. Rowling and you have so much money, why, like, you could have funded so many toilets. You could have funded so many private toilets, right? It could have been like top of the range. It could have had like the Japanese, like, what you call it, like the water pumps.
Yeah, the Toto.
That'd be great.
The way nicer turf-only toilet. Yeah.
Well, that's it. Like, you could have done that. You could have done that and sort of still, but you didn't choose, and now as a result, no one gets to piss. That's it.
Well, welcome to Britain. Just hold it.
Yeah, it's the diaper country. We have to become Dipe Nation. That's the only thing I can imagine is the solution to this problem.
Is this actually, like, have we found the answer there? Is it that someone involved in all of this is a diaper fetishist?
Oh, the adult baby takeover is back on. Yeah. After years. It's been years, but it's back on. They were playing the long game.
Their plans are measured in centuries.
There's no way to sort of like see this in any other way, because it's like, and this is the thing, like the thing that people pointed out after this victory was like, well, the victories like didn't, like, no one, even the people who claim to be victims of this, didn't really achieve anything, right? Like, there are no plans to reopen the toilets. There were no calls to reopen the toilets.
Not to lean too hard on the cruelty is the point, but that's the point. Like, the point is us getting sort of immiserated.
But the sort of additional thing is it's like, well, everyone gets to be miserable.
Yeah.
And at a time when, like, you're trying to cut costs and everything, one of the sort of markers of like early austerity was the closure of public toilets, right? Because they were easy to kind of get rid of. They were deemed to be too expensive to run, too expensive to manage. And like that has created a lot of knock-on effects, which includes, like, even in like London, the capital city, one of the big problems there is that like lots of people, they have to sort of use like cafes and stuff to go to the toilet. And like lots of those cafes have also like added these very added those locks and those types of...
Can I get the biologically female code to the toilets,
exactly,
please?
So it's just kind of like no one's really achieved anything. The end point of this is no one gets to pee. And then the Monocle shop, which is the only place in London which has the Japanese toilet, toilet will be the place where everyone goes and fights each other.
This is the thing. Trans people are so powerful, right? Because not only have we led the most powerful economy in the world to just sort of tear itself open from the inside just because we exist, we also managed to get a bunch of British people to decide that nobody gets to piss anywhere anymore.
I mean, that was probably going to happen anyway. You were just kind of like catalyst for it.
Well, I'm still taking the credit for it. If I'm being handed the credit for people who hate me going, not only am I going to make your life worse, but I'm going to make everyone else's life way worse, including mine, in order to do it. That's an achievement. That's going on the CV.
Yeah.
So look, I'm noticing we're sort of probably coming around to time a little bit here. So just to bring it back around, while all of the, your usual suspect Guardian columnists and so on are taking a victory lap here, being like, now all of the people who ostracized me for the last 8 years being an obsessive weirdo will surely come crawling back.
You have to be my friend again. The Supreme Court says so. The Supreme Court has annulled my divorce.
Yeah. Graham Linehan, happy family man once again. Apparently. This seems to be what the sort of that side is doing, is declaring not just whatever victory they think they want in the sort of broader public life, but declaring victory in their personal lives as well. And, on the other side, right, there has been huge amounts of protest. There has been a lot of political energy galvanizing towards this because there is still a significant minority of people, even after a decade of constant barrage of propaganda, are broadly supportive of trans rights in this country. And I guess what I want to ask, just because we don't want to end on too much of a downer, is what are the routes forward from here? I mean, we mentioned, of course, going back to the EHRC, for example.
Surely, please, European wokeness, save us. My country, the United Kingdom, yearns for freedom.
My country, the UK, yearns to piss. Reopen the toilets.
I think something we can do immediately is make clear that no one is required to exclude trans people from the loo, right? So we can contact organizations, pubs, whatever we know, and be like, you don't actually have to do this, right? You can. The law says you now can, but as even Baroness Faulkner was saying, there's nothing mandating that anyone have a single sex space. So that's something really easy to do on an immediate level. After that, our options are legislation. So, write your MP, tell them that, this is a violation of trans people's human rights and we need legislation that makes clear that trans people, should be recognized as the sex that they are for the purposes of the Equality Act. I don't think the Labour government is going to do that, it seems like, from what they're saying, but we should keep applying pressure.
They're dead people who they think are their entire constituency aren't going to like that.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. It's the other option is legal challenge, right? And people are working on that. It will take a lot. The thing to be really clear about is if there is any legal challenge or anything of that kind, it's going to take a long time, because this case, Scottish ministers can't appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. So we need a whole new, fresh case. And that has to exhaust domestic remedies before it can go to the European Court of Human Rights. So buff up.
Yeah,
a little while.
Just and any time I go into a bathroom anywhere thinking, well, this could be the test case,
Yeah, and it's not just things like bathrooms, right? Trans women can't bring equal pay claims anymore. That's what this means. So if a trans woman is being underpaid compared to her male colleague, right? She can't bring a claim on that basis anymore because she's male and she can't use a male comparator for that claim. So it's all sorts of little things like that, I think. And, the extra impact this will have on disabled people who are trying to access the loo. There's lots of knock-on effects from this.
Well, I think we know what we have to do next. Nova, it's time for us to do the bathroom tour of England. We're going to get that test case started and we're going to bring it right away.
I would watch that, a sort of top, like a Top Gear, but for loos.
All day, every day, we're in the toilet. We're trying to get thrown out so we can sue. Come join us.
Yeah, we're basically ambulance chasing lawyers, but for gender rights certification. We bring November to court wearing a neck brace for some reason.
somehow it ends up becoming like one of those like darling BBC One shows where they show at like 10:30 a.m. Where it's just like two friends like on a road trip to find like Britain's best bathroom.
Yeah, so if you'd like to apply for that job on my travel show where I try and get arrested in as many
oh my god, it could be like a parts unknown thing, but for bathrooms.
God.
Anthony Bourdain 2, lose unknown. I mean, yeah, so, just like going to the toilets in like the Little Chef on the M4 or whatever, and then being like, yo, so you have condoms and caffeine pills and Blue Chew all here? God, you guys are so fucking lucky. That'd be perfect.
I can't believe we found jokes in this, is the thing.
Yeah,
because
we got there.
I've been feeling fucking horrendous about this since it's happened.
Well, I mean, what else is there?
Yeah, I guess so.
Well,
I don't know.
I mean, we've been talking about doing a video project, you and I. Like, we've been talking about making a series. We're still very sort of early ideas phase, so I'll just put this on the board.
In like a sort of like ending optimistic note, and I think this is why like I can sit here and laugh about this, is trans people have survived worse than this, right? And we'll keep surviving, and we'll keep being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right.
I have this report here that I'm going to open the cover off.
Oh, yeah, of course. I know that report. Look, Jess, I want to thank you very much for coming and speaking with us today about a subject that I've already seen you've been interviewed on quite a bit. So thank you for making the time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And anyway, I'm going to throw back to us in the future. We haven't recorded the first half or the ending yet. So this is actually in the future for both of us.
It's a temporal pincer attack again. Yeah.
It's a rare bit of consistency for the two-parters. So we'll see you on the other side in just a second. But Jess, where can people follow and support you?
You can find me on Blue Sky, Jess O. Thompson. Yeah, I write things sometimes.
Perfect. All right. Well, we will then see all of you in just a few seconds.
Fantastic work, us.
Yes. What a segment. I want to thank Jess again for coming on the show. And thank you all for listening to this free episode of TF. There will be a bonus coming out on the Patreon later this week, as there always is. And until then, we will see you there. Bye all.
Bye.
Bye.